Welcome to this explainer. You know, when we think about history, we usually picture massive eras or decades, right? But today, we're going to flip that script. We're looking at the sheer, unbelievable density of human history by exploring the triumphs, the tragedies, and the intense tensions that all miraculously share just one single date on the calendar. We're talking about July 24th's most dramatic moments, and how one single day can literally act as a magnet for world-changing events. So let's just dive right into this with a pretty simple question. What could a moon landing, a lost Inca citadel, and a baseball bat possibly have in common? I know, it totally sounds like the setup to some bizarre riddle, but there's no trick here, I promise. The connection is purely chronological, and it really highlights just how wild and varied human events can be when we slice history by the day, rather than by the year. The answer is that they all feature highly dramatic events that unfolded on July 24th. To make sense of it all, we'll unpack this through 5 lenses today: frontiers and discoveries, kings, queens, and presidents, the theaters of war, sudden tragedies and triumphs, and finally, one date, countless dramas. Let's jump right in. Part 1. Frontiers and Discoveries, Pushing the Boundaries of Human Exploration. Let's wind the clock back to July 24th, 1911. The explorer Hiram Bingham III finally brought the legendary, long-hidden, lost city of the Incas back into global view. Imagine this. For centuries, this breathtaking architectural marvel, nestled way up high in the Peruvian Andes, had just been completely swallowed by the jungle. It was largely unknown to the outside world. But on this specific summer day, Bingham's expedition pierced through the dense vegetation and boom, Machu Picchu was thrust back onto the map, forever changing our understanding of the Incan Empire. And what's really wild is how human achievement scales over time. Because exactly 58 years later, to the day, the Apollo 11 crews successfully splashed down in the Pacific Ocean, safely concluding the very first lunar landing mission. I mean, think about the massive leap here. On July 24th, humanity went from hacking through jungle vines to rediscover a stone city, all the way to successfully returning 3 astronauts who had literally walked on the surface of the moon. It is the ultimate frontier, conquered on the exact same date. Moving on to Part 2, Kings, Queens, and Presidents, Political Showdowns and Downfalls. From the high frontiers of space and the Andes, we transition into the high-stakes, cutthroat theater of politics. On this date, in 1567, a dramatic royal upheaval went down when Mary, Queen of Scots, was forced to abdicate her throne to her 1-year-old son, James VI. And, this wasn't some gentle retirement. She was imprisoned and compelled to sign away her entire kingdom under immense political duress. Just let that sink in for a second. A reigning monarch stripped of her crown and replaced by a literal toddler. It instantly altered the geopolitical landscape of 16th century Britain, all on a July 24th. Fast forward a few centuries, and this same date perfectly bookends the political arc of Richard Nixon. On one hand, we see then Vice President Nixon confidently sparring with Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev in Moscow during the famous 1959 kitchen debate. It was a moment of high diplomatic drama that really boosted his national profile. But fast forward exactly 15 years to July 24th, 1974. The U.S. Supreme Court unanimously rules that President Nixon cannot withhold subpoenaed White House tapes. It was the legal blow that sealed his political downfall. One date representing both a massive political triumph and a fatal defeat. Which brings us to our third section, the theaters of war, chaos and destruction on the battlefield. Let's look at how warfare has evolved, starting way back during the Wars of Scottish Independence in 1304. King Edward I took Stirling Castle using the terrifying Warwolf. And this proves that the dramatic impact of battlefield technology is definitely ancient. The Warwolf wasn't just your standard catapult. It's actually believed to be the largest trebuchet ever built in history. It was a massive feat of medieval engineering, so intimidating that the defenders inside the castle literally tried to surrender before it was even fired. But Edward actually refused. He wanted to test out his new weapon. It's a pretty striking example of how warfare heavily relies on technological intimidation. Pausing to look at modern warfare, the number 9,000 represents the staggering tons of explosives dropped during Operation Gomorrah on Hamburg starting July 24, 1943. This completely destroyed 280,000 buildings and caused massive loss of life. During World War II, British, Canadian, and American forces commenced a devastating, coordinated bombing campaign. By day and by night, the explosives just rained down. The scale of destruction represented by this single number is, well, it's difficult to fully comprehend, but it definitely marks this date as a deeply somber anniversary in the history of global conflict. Let's move on to Section 4, Sudden Tragedies and Triumphs, the unpredictable nature of history. This heavy number, 844, forces us to remember the lives lost in 1915 when the passenger ship SS Eastland suddenly capsized. But the crazy thing is, it was still tied to a dock in the Chicago River. It's a uniquely horrific tragedy. This wasn't a ship lost at sea in a raging storm or anything. The passengers were simply boarding for a company picnic, and the vessel rolled over right there in the city center. To this day, it remains the deadliest shipwreck in Great Lakes history. It really shows us how rapidly and inexplicably ordinary life can turn into a historic disaster. Now, juxtaposing that sheer tragedy with bizarre sporting chaos, we look to 1983. George Brett of the Kansas City Royals stepped up to the plate and blasted what appeared to be an epic game-winning home run against the New York Yankees. It was a picture-perfect athletic triumph. The stakes were incredibly high, and Brett delivered exactly what the fans came to see. But hey, on July 24th, nothing is ever quite that simple, is it? That celebratory moment was immediately erased by the now legendary pine tar incident. A minor technicality regarding back grip wiped the triumphant run completely off the board. The Yankees manager pointed out that Brett had pine tar spread further up the bat handle than the rulebook actually allowed. So suddenly, an epic athletic achievement was completely stripped away, literally all because of a measuring tape and some sticky tree sap. You just can't make this stuff up. The umpire's ruling that the hit was completely nullified sparked one of the most explosive animated reactions in sports history, right there on the diamond. George Brett famously sprinted out of the dugout, face absolutely red with rage, having to be physically restrained. It remains one of the most replayed, infamous moments in baseball history. It's a great reminder that wild drama can strike just as easily on a baseball diamond as it can in a royal court. And finally, Section 5, One Date, Countless Dramas. What a single day represents. As we wrap up this explainer, let's zoom out. Across the centuries, July 24 alone contains massive medieval sieges, royal downfalls, lost Inca cities, safe lunar returns, presidential defeats, and legendary baseball meltdowns. When you stack these moments side by side, it really hits home. We tend to view history as these isolated silos, sports history over here, political history over there, ancient history somewhere else. But time just doesn't work that way. The calendar is really just a backdrop for the incredible, chaotic, and inspiring spectrum of human activity. Seeing how much human triumph, tension, and tragedy can unfold on just one random date on the calendar, I have to leave you wondering, what history might you be making today? The dates on our calendar aren't just numbers, they are layered with centuries of human striving. The boundaries you push, the challenges you face, all join a continuous narrative. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this helped you grasp the fascinating density of history, and I definitely encourage you to keep exploring the amazing stories hidden within every single day.